One of the things I wanted to get from you here on this conversation that I think would be super helpful is you mentioned story banks. And to me, there must be a few key stories. We've already covered the founder and how powerful that is. Are there other key stories you feel would be so important for us to kind of know, at least at a basic level, so that we could be more effective in our sales?
I love your questions, man. It's so cool to be on a show like this, man. I love it. So kudos to you again for your intentionality. It just speaks volumes. So yeah, there's a few different stories. Now, there's 5 that I'm really excited about right now in a recession because I think they're really, really powerful and they don't require any approval from a CEO or any. You can craft them right now as an entrepreneur, as a salesperson, whoever you are. Okay, so the first story is what I really like to think about as the elevator story, meaning the objective is to hook the human being. So that's a punchy 45 to 60-second story that allows your prospect to become the hero of the story, and it sparks enough intrigue for you to land that first meeting, right? So think about you being at a networking event, right? I've had this so many times where somebody comes over and says, so what do you do, right? And everyone comes up with the same old response. So how can you deliver something that is punchy and on point? And we can go through an example shortly. But the second story is if you want to build a human-to-human connection with another human being, it's the personal story, which doesn't just explain what you do, but why you do it. So Jason, that story that I shared with you, because you asked me how I got started, I probably shared that 200 times. I've lost count. So it's the same story I've shared before. So it's that type of narrative. The third story is if you want to accelerate trust, there's nothing better than a customer success story. So that is allowing your prospect to see themselves in the main character and ultimately choose you as their Yoda, right? Potentially choose you or see you as their Yoda to take them from pain to glory. The fourth story, which I'm excited about right now, is the reverse resistance story, which is handling an objection before it even arises, right? So I don't like the idea personally of getting to the end of a conversation and somebody saying, oh, that's too expensive. I'd rather just be a human being and handle that through story up front. The fifth story, which is very powerful right now, which a lot of people are asking me about, is the cost of inaction story. Not the return of investment, but what does somebody have to lose by not moving forward with you? And let's paint a picture of it. If you've ever seen the movie A Christmas Carol, you'll remember the third ghost, the ghost of Christmas yet to come, who walks Scrooge through the future, right? What life will look like if his behavior stayed exactly where it was. And that was the story that got Scrooge to change, because the perceived effort, right? The perceived cost of staying as he was a lot higher than the effort of change. So those stories are the ones that I really like to get people to focus on in a methodical way. But to be honest, an elevator story is the one where I think people should start, because all of the rest are irrelevant if you can't get somebody's attention. I'm of the belief that the goal is the following: get somebody's attention, keep it, and then earn the opportunity to solve their problem. Now, you can't do all of the other stories if you don't have somebody's attention.
Okay. If you're listening to this or watching on YouTube, this is the part where you're going to be rewinding and taking notes, and we're going to try to create some handouts for all of you in the community so you actually have a checklist of everything that's been covered here, because this is golden. And I'm listening to this and I'm like, okay, I have some that I know I've done. Okay, I got a couple of those. I know which ones I'm missing. And I have some of my customer case studies, but I haven't framed it in a story. And the gold gem to me is this cost of inaction story. Oh my God. In the fact that you said it with the story of Scrooge is just yeah, that is what gets people to change, right? Question for the cost of inaction story. Do you have to paint, is that something that you make up? What's the level of reality versus fiction? Is there an ethical thing you have to consider? How do you craft that inaction story?
Yeah, this is my take on it, is it's got to be, you've got to be ethical with it. And the way I like to see it is, if I'm having a conversation with you, right, and we're 5% of the way through a conversation, and I say, hey, Jason, here's what you have to lose by not partnering with me. You're going to be like, dude, I don't know you. So actually, like, thank you, but no thank you. So to preface this, it requires enough rapport and it requires you to have done effective discovery so you understand the buyer's story, what their problem is. They're then admitted to actually having that problem, the magnitude of it, and wanting it solved. And you understand what their story, what their narrative is right now, right? Because you've done effective discovery. You've asked the right questions. And if you're really a trusted advisor, 75% of the way through a conversation, for example, if I were to paint a picture around, man, look, there's two roads we can really go down here. And you can paint a vivid picture around, look, staying as you are, this is what could occur. Right? The good, the bad, the ugly. But if you were to shift your behavior, this is what could occur because I have a client who is in your shoes and this is what happened to them. So it's kind of mixed up with a customer success story because you're going to allow them to see themselves in somebody who was in their shoes but took action. And then hopefully they're going to be that human being.
Yeah, because by the way, I love the fork in the road technique. That's something I also really like, and just painting that vivid picture. And I was going to say then, if we want to get that kind of hook story there, I think that's probably going to be the best takeaway I'd love to leave people with here. If we've covered a lot in this session already, like we've talked about how we behaviorally will respond to stories better. We are dictated by our emotions way more than we'd like to admit to. And stories is a way to get our emotions to be on board with whatever change of behavior we want to do, which a sales process inevitably bring us to. And now you've talked about the power of it. You've talked about the different ones we could develop. And the most important one being this kind of elevator pitch one. What are some of the fundamentals that we should be able to do to be able to craft that elevator one without sounding like a broken record?
Yeah, man. So there's two ways to look at it, right? There's the 45-second elevator story, which I teach, but often we need to earn the opportunity for that story. And often we don't have enough time. So there's a ladder here, okay? So let's take a look at the first 8 to 10-second message we can share to often earn the opportunity to share that elevator story. And then I'll break down the elevator story. So when Steve Jobs released the iPod in, I think, 2007, don't quote me, but he said something along the lines of, it's like having 1,000 songs in your pocket. And the crowd went crazy because I'm like, oh yeah, I get it. And they want to know more. So the question is what can you say to another human being which makes them tilt their head, crinkle their forehead and go, huh? Like, I'm confused. Tell me more, right? So I'll give an example. If I told you, hey, you said, hey, what are you doing? I said, hey, man, so you know how parents share bedtime stories with their kids to get them to sleep? Well, I teach salespeople how to share sales stories so they get their prospects to take action, right? So then you're like, oh, maybe tell me more. So I have a client who says something along the lines of, so you know how Amazon, created a marketplace for the world of books? Well, that's exactly what we're doing for the world of metals. So then somebody goes, tell me more. So the idea here is create this air of curiosity through this type of hook, through this type of analogy. So one template for everybody is, so you know how X did whatever for this industry? Well, that's what we're doing for the industry of Y. So that's like one little framework somebody can take away. And then you've earned the opportunity, because that's like 8 to 10 seconds, right? Then you've earned the opportunity for the elevator story. So I would start with a hook. So Jason, I would probably start with something along the lines of, look, man, I've got 2 responses here. The boring one full of corporate jargon or the exciting one? Which one do you want to hear? Right? So hopefully you're going to say the exciting one. So I'm going to start in a very unpredictable way to give an effective pattern interruption to teach this human being that the next 45 seconds are going to be very different. So I need you to pay attention. So whatever that hook is for you. So I was training this sales team over in Chicago. And one of the ladies who crafted a hook, it was something around this. So I said to her, so what do you do? And she said, well, Ravi, from the experience that you've had with us of our brand, what do you think we do? And I was like, oh my God, that's incredible, right? So think of an effective hook which grabs your prospect. Okay, then we move into the context of the story where we make your prospect the main character and we set the scene. So I'd say, Jason, imagine for a second that you're the VP of sales for a CRM solution based over in San Francisco. So suddenly what I've done is I've created a hypothetical scenario by telling you to imagine a new world. And I've made you the main character of this story. And I've also called out my ideal client that I like to partner with. And then I'll say, but here's the thing. Your team are struggling to close deals because they're shoving features down your prospect's throat, right? Now I'm entering into the conflict. And I can say something along the lines of, and man, guess what? Every single quarter, you're secretly anxious about presenting your numbers to the board because you know they may not be where they should be, right? And then I'm going to go into the turning point, which is, look, you know you want your team to sell in a way that builds trust, that builds a human-to-human connection, and really sells without selling. That's the exact thing I'm obsessed about. Right? And then so that was the turning point, that piece there. And then the transformation is that's the exact thing I'm obsessed about, giving you hope, okay, that you could also achieve a similar transformation. And then I deliver the prospect impact, meaning here's what it means to you. It's funny because my pure focus is helping people just like you ditch feature selling and sell more through storytelling. And then I'll move to the call to action, which isn't book a call with me, okay? It needs to meet the human being with where they are at inside of their journey today. So I could say something simple along the lines of, Jason, what about you? What do you do? And also calling out that person's name, right, is super powerful because most people don't listen. So if you showcase you can listen, man, it's a game changer.